I'm K.Bedford with K.Bedford Customs. I make these nice custom frames for people, and we're here tonight to do a wrap job with HandleBra leather bar wrap on this bike. We're going to do a little demonstration here. I've already done this one side, so you can see what the end result will be here to start with. And we don't need to do this twice, because each side is pretty much the same. So we're going to start out by putting on the leather bar wrap. There's a couple things you can do to base the tape. In other words, put an underlayment on there. One is just a hockey tape like this, which is adhesive, of course, and it's got a little bit of tackiness on the outside. It makes a really good base on the bar because it's very grippy and it keeps the tape from sliding while you're wrapping it and afterwards, but it shouldn't move anyway if it's wrapped properly. You can also, if you want a little more bulk, this is done straight over the hockey tape, but if you wanted this bulked up and a little more padding on it, you can actually wrap it over an existing cork wrap or whatever standard wrap that you have on there, and that'll make a little more cushy grip, or for people with large hands like myself, it bulks it up a little bit so you've got a better grip. So I'm going to start out by just putting down, and you don't have to be fancy with this because this is just an underlayment, wrapping the bar with the hockey tape. One of the things that good bike shop owner, very good mechanic, showed me was to have all your stuff ready to do this. The tools, the scissors you're going to need for cutting the tape and other materials, and the electrical tape which you're going to use to do the finish, have it right there at hand, so when you're at the end of this or in the middle of it, you're not having to reach all over the place for stuff or have a small bench or something like that next to you where everything is close at reach. Now there are two trains of thought as far as starting the tape and which direction to wrap in. Some people say inside out, some people say outside in. It changes the direction of the angle of the tape, but I don't think there's any better way than the other. As long as it's wrapped properly, it should stay put. It won't unwrap. So what we want to do is start the tape, and this is one of the key areas where people have the biggest problems. I usually start it so that you have to overlap it to hold the end down, and you want about a third of the width of the bar tape overhanging the end of the handlebar, and that's going to get tucked in later and finished off with a bar end plug similar to this one, or just like that one. And you make your first wrap. You've now covered the other end, which is holding it, and you go ahead and make your first wrap once again with that overhang, and you immediately start with a slight angle. And with this particular tape, it's got a decorative stitching. It makes it a little more complicated because you want the wraps to be even, and the stitching shows it. If it's not correct, it's going to look terrible. So try and keep it nice and even as you go up the bar, but as you start hitting the curve, you have to start changing the angle of the tape. And at some point or another, you will actually have to overlap the stitching, and also make sure in the front, take a look around there every now and then, that you're not leaving gaps in the front here where the bar is showing through. Now with the leather tape, it's far stronger than other bar wraps, so you can actually put quite a bit of tension on it, which is nice because it gives a real tight wrap on there and the tape will never go anywhere. I've already put a strip on here to cover the back side of the bar clamp from the lever, so when we go around the lever and create the V here on the side, the clamp itself is not going to show. It's just going to be leather all the way around. And you just continue up, and when you've got this last wrap up against the lever, do one more. Get it so it really wraps up underneath there. That's part of the key of getting a real good smooth transition around the lever. Okay. And you don't have to do, some people in the past, and some bar tapes this works okay, you don't have to do a complete figure 8 wrap around this. And especially with the leather wrap, if you do a figure 8, it's going to get very bulky here, and especially on the back side. So you don't want to do a figure 8 with this. If you just do this crisscross pattern like I just did, that will be sufficient. It'll work out just fine. Now we're coming to another bend, and these particular bars happen to have a rather tight curve here. So as you can see from this one over here, we're going to end up with the same thing here. You will have to cover the wraps. I mean, it's the stitching, but as long as you do it so that it is consistent with each wrap, then it will actually look really nice, even though the stitching is partially obscured. And always keep that tension on the tape. And as you come, once you've gotten around that bend, then doing the spacing here becomes a lot easier. And you can maintain a very consistent angle and spacing as you go across till you get to the very end here. Okay, now this is another part, the transition at the end and how you get this to come out so it's perpendicular to the bar like that. You basically have to always remember that when you cut the wrap, you have to cut it perpendicular to the bar. Even though the tape is angled, you're going to be making a cut like this. So just make sure that that cut is perpendicular. It'll be easier to cut it this way. So what you're going to try and do is make a nice long taper cut on this. Trim it right here at the end so it's a little bit smoother. And another little word of advice is that really good sharp scissors make this a whole lot easier. Now you'll have a good guideline to tape that by. Now a lot of bars have a logo on them like this, and most of them are pretty consistent as far as the width here, so that the spacing from the stem to the edge of the tape ends up being the same. But if you really want to, take it to the really finite degree here, you can use a small ruler and check them back and forth so that when you do that second wrap, it ends up being exactly the same as the first one. But now that we've got it to this point, I'm ready to trap this end down. So I start my good grade of electrical tape. And we just go ahead and make a few wraps of that. To finish off the end. And when you when you wrap the electrical tape, and this was another trick that was shown to me by that same person, when you wrap the electrical tape, no matter how much you try not to, you stretch it a little bit. Leave it hanging for a few minutes, and it'll allow it to stretch back, because it is a vinyl tape. It'll allow it to stretch back, and then later on, like tomorrow, next day, or after a few rides, the tape won't look like it's shrunken and pulled back and leaving you know, a gooey line of adhesive back here. So just leave it hanging for a few minutes and let it stretch back on its own, and then when you're done with everything else, just go ahead and fold it under. Now you're ready to just basically go ahead and finish it off by pulling the hood back, and you've got nice transitions on the side. You've got none of the clamp showing through, and we are ready for the bar end plug. That's coming in from the side here. Look at, got it. Now what you want to do is, it's kind of a three-handed thing here, is go ahead and start pushing that in, and then start to plug in like so, and the bar's finished. And now, last thing, once we've allowed that to shrink a little bit, we'll just go ahead and tidy that up underneath there, and you're all set. You've got a finished wrap job, you're ready to go.